wait.
Welcome to TVD show.
Okay.
Featuring was and
Yeah.
Hey
Hi
guys.
guys.
Yeah, let's get it going.
That's the intro, by the way. You know that.
Yeah, no,
For
like
real.
you started
Yeah,
the
that's
whole
the
pod.
intro.
Alright.
Yeah,
Now let's get it.
for sure.
Hi.
Guys, this is Tibedi. We've mentioned him, I don't even know, countless times on the
Too many
podcast.
times.
We said one of the smartest people we know, one of the dopest oaks we know. So, Tibedi, welcome to the Tibedi show, I guess.
No, thanks for having me to my show. I guess. No, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so we can get straight into it, dog.
Yeah. So I have to glaze a bit, right? And I'll never do this again. But
Okay.
genuinely, this guy, one of the smartest.
No,
one of the
gen,
smartest
gen,
guys I
gen.
know.
No,
And like,
for real.
funny enough, even with my entrepreneurial journey and everything, because we started working together last year at some point, and like.
Yeah.
I had thought of my business idea at that time, but hadn't really taken anything to do it or like put any strides forward. After speaking to this guy, I promise you guys, he opened my mind up to a whole new level
it's
of
mad, it's
thinking.
mad.
Like
Yeah, really.
books I'd never thought of, like philosophies and stuff I'd never thought of. So yeah, guys, like just want to say this guy is crazy.
Real entrepreneurial.
Nah, for
real,
real.
for real. No, genuine. Like, no, last dude. No, it's serious.
But was I living there, dude? Like, yeah. Nah, but I
Yeah.
appreciate it, man, because it really does mean a lot. But it's also nice to see like everyone's journey, like the growth, and yeah, just like standards, the types of conversations we're having, and the second and third order effects of those things, you know, because you never know who's watching. But if you can get someone to even try, you know, that's good enough. So I do appreciate them, man.
Nah, solid. So let me kick us off with something. And TBD, I'm gonna throw you under the bus a bit. I mentioned this in one episode. One day I hit him up. I was like, "How you doing?" And he gave me an answer that I never expected, and it was essentially something to do along the lines of being good or not being good doesn't mean that you're bad. And there's just that whole thing you went off. So if you wanna elaborate on essentially your views on, do you have to be good? Do you have to be okay all the time? What is your metric of happiness?
Yeah, man. I don't remember that conversation, but like, so I'll give an answer, but to that, like, it's one of those things where you have to like, ask yourself if like feeling good is something that you constantly want to be, right? Like, I think it first starts with like the contrast. If there isn't bad, then there isn't good. It just is. You know what I'm saying? So like, there has to be the opposite of or the two. You have to look at things at like both extremes. And like one thing that I constantly use, even like for our team, is when we start something and we want to see if we want to like possible avenues of actually implementing it. It's one of those things where understand both extremes and tend towards one. Right, you can have in this instance, you can have you always upset or there's always something wrong, or you're always happy and there's never something wrong, right? Those are two extremes, and too much of an extreme is never good. But you need to decide if you want to tend towards one, right? But also in tending towards one, you understand that it's not always going to be like that, because like it's part of like the growth of any person, like regardless of if you're an entrepreneur. And yeah, I guess in the entrepreneurial like sense, as I remember I told you, like it's sort of bipolar. Like I'm never, you're the top of the world, they're at the bottom. Like I can't remember a time where I was just, you know,
Like neutral.
neutral. It's like it's here or here, right? And like that switches so quick because you think the world's gonna end, and then you figure it out. It's like, oh nah, I had this the whole time, right? And then like gives you the confidence to go on. So yeah, that's just my perspective of it. But yeah, I hope that answered it.
Nah, crazy take. Like I promise you, this guy, bro, it was a genuine "How you doing, bro?" And he gave me that answer. And, like again, one of those things that just
On a random Tuesday.
Yo, but it's literally, I think I agree with that so much. Like he said, I think it was another Alex Hormozu quote where he's like, literally being an entrepreneur is one day you feel like you have no idea what's going on. Everything is falling apart, and you figure it out, and now you're on top of the world, and it's just that up and down cycle. What's it called? No, it's so long. That
A
a
fluctuation.
pendulum.
That's
Yeah.
the swing. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for me, like, I think, yeah, 100%, but it's easier said than done, you know, because it's like in the moment, you get angry, you get frustrated, and like sometimes, like in my case, I feel like you forget that it's normal.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you forget that like you have to go through that, and not have to, but for you to go through it is the only way to get better. You know, so like sometimes I find myself being frustrated, like, yo, what the, like you said, like it feels like everything's over, like, oh, I need to take a step back now, like, but it's like you can't, right? Like you need to figure it out, you need to sit and go, and not to make anyone feel some sort of way, but I think that's what makes an entrepreneur at the end of it, you know, is your ability to do that. I think if you lack that, and I say that as in the ability to stick it through, to sit and be like, I'm gonna figure this out one way or another. Of course, still being realistic, like not spending too much of your time on something that is wasting your time and being counterproductive to you. But if you can stick it out and figure it out, then you're good to go, bro. You're good to go. Like that's the starting point to being an entrepreneur, blood. You know, it
You
goes
just
back
know
to
it-
that. Yeah, no.
No, continue, sorry.
No, I was gonna say that Mark Cuban quote that we were talking about in the episode before is like, the world that you're born into is not the world that you're gonna live in. You know, like yes, things are one way now, but it doesn't mean that it's gonna be the same in 2 weeks, for example. Like let's not even say 10 years. You know.
Yeah, I think when you also put it into perspective, nobody wants a boring story when they have to tell it.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. Like,
No. Yes.
Oh, you're writing it
yes.
down.
No. There's like a quote that I had. There's a quote that I had. But yeah.
yeah, I think like it's. I always think about it from two perspectives. Like if there's always a camera watching me, you know, it's one of those things where is what I'm doing right now as part of like, let's say, a documentary, right? Just kind of psych yourself out, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, is if I had to tell my story in like, you know, 30-40 years time, and they ask me every single year what happened, like it would be so boring if I said one day I just went this, I did that, and boom,
It all
you know,
worked
it
out.
just all worked out, right? It's like they need some type of, you know, you need a hero's journey in like everyone's story, right? So having that perspective is also something that it's just one of those things where it's another check box that you like, that's another scar that I'll one day talk about. And it's going to be easier to one day talk about it because everything would have just been a memory, that moment where we thought we were all gonna perish, but like it's, you laugh about those things, right? So yeah, I think it goes a long way as to who one day you'll become and like what those things do for you and the rooms that it gets you into and the relationships you build.
Listen to this quote. So it goes like along the stories, right? So it says our stories are all that we've got. So if you're gonna tell it boldly, tell the truth without fear, because authenticity always makes a phenomenal story. And I feel like you saying that, of like going through it and not just thinking of it as, oh, like it's this thing that passed. Like if you're being authentic and you're being true to yourself, that this shit sucked, this shit was hard to get over, it's a battle scar that I'm gonna have, it makes your story so much better, you know. So it's just to speak to that point, bro. I love that.
Even with that, I think that, I don't know, in a funny way, I use that to see the positive in those down moments, you know. An example which I think I've mentioned, when I started really like pushing my company, you know, December last year, it was because my leg broke. It wasn't, you know, I broke my leg and in that I was like, it would be cool for me to say, wow, my leg broke and I started and that's what happened, you know. And now in all my down moments, I look at it as this was a part of the documentary, like Tibedi said, you know. So I think it's a nice mental frame as well to apply in those situations when things aren't well. It's like, how bad is it right now? Well, shit, that would be so cool in the documentary, in my story of the come up, you know. So no,
100%, bro. So like kind of talking now, I guess, about like the beginning of companies and so forth. Like what about you, blood? Like when, you don't have to speak necessarily about what it is exactly you're doing, but when did you find like that spark inside of you to be like, oh, let me go down this journey and not down the, you know, the opposite side? Like why did you decide to go down this path?
I guess like it's one of those things where if for example, if we're to go broadly speaking and like refine it, if there's one thing that, or one characteristic that at the end of like, by the time I die, one thing I want to be known for is my ability to synthesize, right? And to me what that means is like, there's a Steve Jobs quote where he says he can only connect the dots when looking backwards, right? And one ability that I constantly want is, how do I connect the dots before it even happens, right? And be there at that current point in time. But when you also go back and look at your life and your journey throughout your life, you're also able to connect dots. I think, I remember grade 7 download. I don't know anything about programming, and I just downloaded Java app on my phone, thinking that that's how you
I
learn.
remember
Right?
the coffee thing also. Like,
Yeah,
it's
it's
like,
like
the icon's like a coffee cup or some shit.
yeah, it's like and I just wrote code, and like just actually the word code thing is gonna do something, right? And then ended up deleting it, and like certain movies that I would watch that were just like or hiking movies, and that started that whole journey of like I actually want to build, and I want to code and I want to build technology, right? But when it comes to also like the business side, I mean, those who know me know that I used to like play football. In fact, that was a career trajectory for me. But you look at the certain things that I'll do around that, where firstly I sold literally all technology I had, iPad, everything, right, just to like get things to fund that
For
myself,
football,
right?
okay.
Or one thing that everyone knows is like nobody wants to wait in tuck shop lines, right? So
Oh, I remember this.
one
Yeah,
one
yeah.
agreement that I had with the ladies is like in the morning or just before break, I would go to everyone who wants to get food, right? And like be 50 rand, 100 rand, whatever. And I'll take a portion of that as like service fee. And literally some days I'll go home like 200, 250 a single day, right?
In high school, by the way. In high
It
school.
was like grade 9. Yeah, grade 9. Then one of my boys took it, and I guess that was the first lesson about like a defensible product. But really, how now coming to like nowadays, and the company so far. So, it first started. A friend of mine last year sent me a competition, cybersecurity competition. I think it was hosted by like Telcom. It was about trying to figure out SIM card fraud. And in that, like, I don't know anything about cybersecurity, but I thought maybe I could use a different approach using like artificial intelligence, right? That's something that I've been in for like such a long time and just been learning the basis of it. So yeah, from there I went on this whole journey of learning how the human voice works, how to compute it, and how to build basically a system in that case called the text prompt to speaker verification. And it was two-sided towards it, as to it prompts the user to say text and it verifies that the text is said, right? So I know that the person is alive, is not recorded, but also looking at the identity of like a human's voice and mapping it. But from there I realized, no, there's actually way more value I can do from that process and just provide a security feature in that. And right now, I went from that core product to a single critical component in what we currently offer, which is basically software or AI software for call centers that helps them personalize conversation with customers so that they can increase sales or their collections, but also ensure that they understand the journey of the customer and constantly puts their situation into perspective. And look, it did open up like a lot of doors. Like I was in an accelerator run by like Robot Gang, and through that you're able to then see the world. Like my eyes opened because you're in a space where it's just tech people.
Can you explain, like, for example, what an accelerator is for someone who doesn't know?
So like there's an incubator and then there's like an accelerator, right? And what an accelerator is, you started an incubator just is getting you started from like a base knowledge. You want to understand what marketing is, you want to understand what sales, what building a financial model looks like, prototyping, design, just all critical functions and skills that you require in as you grow on to build. An accelerator is more action, right? It's you have the theory, execute on it. You have 3 months to do that. In those 3 months, you're expected, let's say, to build like a prototype, to go to market and try to start getting product market fits, right? It's building a team and building systems around that, and just getting your champion customer, trying to get some feedback. And it's one of those things. It's like an adrenaline shock for your company, right? So we went through like that whole process of it. But you know, the one thing that you begin to value and realize is just being in a room where people are doing crazy stuff is like, you know, it's eye opening, right? But you also then get to a point where you also outgrow that, where you're like, this is crazy, but if this is just a small sub segment of what's actually happening in the tech ecosystem, both in South Africa, and globally, like what is really out there, right? And I guess that was one of the biggest challenges that I saw at first, is like, it's, I think there's a lot of innovation that's going on in the world, but there's very little innovation that's contextualized to like the South African climates. And you talk about it from, let's say you talk to a lot of VCs, right? If you go on YouTube and go on like a Y Combinator, right, and the types of pre-seed funding that companies try to get without any product even, right, it's like 500 $1 million. But the same won't necessarily apply to like a South Africa, where someone will just give you that for ideas. Different ecosystem, different culture, and of course we're getting there, we're catching up. And we at that point right now where I think we're what America felt in the early 2000s with the tech boom and all of that. That's where South Africa currently is, right?
It's so jarring though.
What do you mean?
Yeah, it's just like, okay, of course there's, reasons for that. Like, we know we live in South Africa, but it's just like it's annoying, dude, for us to be so behind, because it's like, how far ahead could we have been if, those circumstances didn't exist? Like for you to say, I don't know, you said early 2000s for America, and now it's 2023 here, 23 years later, and we're only now just getting into operating on that same level. Like, it's,
I don't know, man. I think I kind of, obviously, it's as a nation, right? I see why it's jarring. But for me now, as an entrepreneur, I think for me, it's like one of the biggest blessings, because I've now have, say, with America, 23 years worth of case study of them trialing it, doing it. Now I can just study, learn from their mistakes, and implement into a market that is evolving there and that needs it. So for my business, I saw it all over the world. I saw that it can work, but we don't have it here. So how do I take that knowledge and then implement that into South Africa in a way that works for us with where we are now, and be able to scale that, with the lessons that I've been able to see from abroad. So I don't know, like a lot of people, I think, don't see the opportunity in, I think, maybe Africa as a whole, And for me as an entrepreneur now, and with the abundance of knowledge that we have, whether through YouTube, through books, through just the abundance of knowledge we have, I think it's, I don't want to say easy, but I think it's so much easier now for you to literally copy and paste, like take and apply now. And obviously, maybe in terms of the infrastructure, that may be where it a bit more difficult. We're not at the scale or level where we're able to match, where the rest of the world is. But in terms of starting it out here now, I think it's an amazing time for someone who wants to try those new things. But yeah.
No, I'm with that. And another perspective is, like the most companies that you see, not all of them, but a lot of them is, it's an American model that we're going to put into South Africa, because we know that the Western side of the world they don't have the context of how Africa really operates. But as an African, South African, you're able to take those ideas, broadly, and then try to, contextualize it to here. You have, you had Amazon, and you compare that to what's the equivalent of that in like South Africa, or even PayPal with so many fintech companies, or it's really one of those things like copy and paste. And I think the turning point will be when South Africa innovates something for the world, or Africa innovates something that can compete in those other markets, and really scale and grow. But yeah, I think the one advantage that we have as like young entrepreneurs is that and even in South Africa, like we have this unique ability to be able to culture shift. Like it's in us that we look at like languages or even different rooms. Like we're able to just to know how to address different rooms in different manners. But that's like important broadly, because we have a perspective that's going to allow us to constantly configure our like product offering and our innovation to meet different environments and different people. And another thing is a lot of what we have and what we believe is not documented as well as was the Western world, right?
Like what?
I'd say just the way of life. You know, I can, if I tell you describe Silicon Valley, you've never been there, but you can tell me, you know, what's what, right? And if I go to anybody in America and say describe Johannesburg, you know, describe country, describe Kenya, you won't be able to give that, you know, that those small points, right? But as a person from those environments, you can describe both worlds, and what you can build can address both issues. Firstly, you know, starting at home, maybe going to Africa, that is a developing, fast developing and untapped market. But what works here, how do we bring it over to the world? Because the world doesn't know how to bring it over here.
It's like using westernization to your benefit, right? Like it's like you take the effects of you know, the West infiltrating, like you said, our culture, our mindsets, the way we act, the way we speak, the way we carry ourselves, our fashion and everything, and reversing it to be like you say, because we know that and we also know what's here, we can use that to our advantage and, you know, not weaponize it, but
No, not weaponize it.
not weaponize it, but yeah, use it to our advantage. I like that. So I guess, like, let's go through, you mentioned like some data sets or something that you wanted to bring up. Like, let's go into them and kind of talk about them and get into them, you know, and kind of go on that point of like, there's so much opportunity that you can go into, you know.
Yeah, so like the first one would be so basically the idea is it's a statistic that you see, or growth trajectory that you see, that's that one line or that one change from a specific point in time to now is enough to say there's actually something that's growing there. And what you like begin to see is that there's so many niche areas in which there's like opportunity in that nobody really is tapping into, right? We like speak about these ideas a lot where, you know, let's focus on like AI in the beginning, right? From the beginning, you could see AI and deepfakes, for example. We spoke about that. You could just see it as, I can create cool stuff with like my friends, or like I could do a pranking, right? A prank. But what are the implications of that? For example, you might have instances where now validating a human's identity on social platforms, or you're on a digital signature, that opens up maybe a solution for like cryptocurrency, where someone can sign with their wallets or a platform like that. Or in deepfake technology, how are you able to then verify actual humans' identity and build a product around that? Or you can switch it up to like facing it on a marketing side, where you ask yourself, how are we able to build a marketing platform where we can use deepfakes and allow our models to be everywhere in the world without even needing to go out of their house, right? What are the implications for that type of thing? And in certain instances, you know, that's an example of building for the world. But what does it mean when I say building for South Africa or Africa? In our case, one thing that we saw was one huge data point that we saw, and I got this from one of the execs at Spotify. He was like, the internet is transforming. It went from curation to recommendation to generation. And then it hit me that out of everything that was created in the last 20 years, recommendation is the backbone of the most value and revenue generated for any company in the world. You look at it from a perspective of social media, where if you're able to personalize a person's feed, they stay on the platform longer.
Forever.
Ad revenue goes up for those platforms. Amazon, they're able to how many times is this would be a good add-on, and then you buy it also because you can see, right? They're also able to personalize product offerings, right? To Netflix with the recommendations, and there's so many areas where just the idea of understanding your customer is key, right? The question that you ask yourself is, how well do companies, or how well do we know each other and can personalize, especially a South African's experience in a way that abides by cultural norms, right? And the reality is that it's not necessarily that high, and it's like that for a big reason. You look at a digital divide, and you look at other sources of information that you can possibly use to start understanding exactly who's this person, like what do they like, how am I able to build something that communicates to them and not just copy paste everything else. And it just goes down to now, what does the world look like with generation, right? So the ability to generate experiences, right? And that's a new front that we can like completely open up, and it allows for different perspectives as to how do you combine being able to recommend what you have with the flexible nature of being able to generate an experience from scratch for this particular individual, right? And Lord knows where the world goes with that. But when you look at it big picture wise, it's one stat that I saw, or just that one foresight that I had, that was like, this is like where it's at. And it's not just ChatGPT generating text, right? Or Midjourney generating images. Is actually, how can we build something that understands and is contextualized to our environment and is able to personalize an experience for the user in different ways, in purchasing, in offerings, in what they're able to build and what they're able to use that for as a co-pilot in their own lives. So yeah, that's one perspective. We can go on more and more.
Yeah, let's do some more. I think like the people that watch are probably just like, okay, I see.
You know,
what
it's
you're
crazy. I was
talking about.
about to say, like, when I listen to this guy, I forgot that I'm doing a podcast. I'm watching him. Like, I promise you, like, I'm watching. Like,
Yeah. No, I hear you. No,
Yeah.
real.
One thing, so because I'm gonna like stick with like technology. We can go to like other things, but I think technology is one thing I can speak better on. The cost of compute is going down. So now this opens up a whole different thing.
Wait, build on that. The cost of compute.
Yeah. Okay. So, basically, you look at technology as a whole. Let's say like AI, for example. You need computers or servers to be able to provide your code or your software to the world and handle all those, requests and people using it simultaneously, right? So you have like data centers, and we know that Amazon, Google, and Microsoft are the biggest ones, with Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud Platform. But the cost of compute is going down, meaning that the cost of manufacturing is going down, and the cost for me to use some of the cloud resources is going down. And for any software company, they'll tell you that from a cost of goods standpoint, compute is the most expensive, right? From operational, it could be like salaries and other things, but compute is really expensive. But what does that really mean for as an opportunity for us to really leverage that fact? So what are the implications of that, right? It's, are we able to it's number one, the barrier for entry for a lot of experimentation for newbies coming in, right? It's no more a difficult thing to get a fast GPU to run this crazy workload. Is now expensive. It's now the barrier to entry for people to experiment, right? So are you able to leverage that factor in and build sort of a school program that is able to teach people all those areas, right? And the cost is not going to be as high because it's controlled. Parents are going to be willing to pay that. Remember, you also have to think about it from a commercial standpoint, how that looks, right? But then you look at the second and third order effects of that. So you're starting to breed interest into really students or people our age finding some sort of excitement in building those and actually being in touch with where the world is going. And yeah, it's like really interesting as to what does that mean for the world of technology, and what type of access and cool stuff are we able to do with heavy workloads and really good models, how the cost goes down, and how are we able to then start leveraging that factor to start opening doors for new types of innovation can be created for literally anybody that has an idea and has the will to actually learn and go ahead with that.
I think, like, okay, now in the South African context, like, do you think it's easier or harder? Because we need to like factor in everything, right? It's like your economic status, your let's say actually say your economic status is like, how easy is it to like incite that interest, you know? Because like we can speak about it in American context and say like, okay, well, this person can get access to this and so forth and so forth, but like in the South African context, how easy is that to do, you know? Because it kind of seems like that's something that all three of us would want to do as well, right? It's like to build up and build in South Africa and also seize that opportunity. But it's like, yeah, man, I feel like it would be harder, you know, to entice that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at infrastructure as a whole, like what already exists and like the comparison like between the two, right? I think one thing that's like one huge thing that's happening is that you're seeing a lot of investments into African infrastructure as a whole, right? Even from like other, because if you look at one of the fastest developed, we are the fastest or one of the fastest developing continents in the world, right? And just for a normal person from an underprivileged background, how they can get into these things is, number one, I'd say creating a culture of curiosity in that sense, right? And from there is providing basic resources or access to internet, and so some sort of like a laptop or something to really work with. But one thing that's, I think maybe I missed the point of why I spoke about the Java thing in grade 7 was I had left that, I deleted that app that same day because I had this interest, but there was nobody to point me.
Nurture that.
Like if I could, like one thing I'd do, if I could go back in time, I'd just tell myself, just search this thing in YouTube.
Yeah.
That's the one thing, just search it in YouTube, right? But it's really that information is more it's accessible, but at what to what extent? Because it's accessible to the extent that I know it exists. Right.
So you don't have the resource to get it though. That's the thing.
Even the know-how, like there's probably certain things right now where for example, dude, we're about to like invest a lot into like building data sets for different like languages to help train or fine tune existing models for, you know, different vernacular languages. Only to find out that one of the biggest data sets is free and is held by like a department in our government, right? But like is that like someone just tell me like you should start there before you even start investing in anything else, right? But that information, it's worth so much, and it's free, but it was so expensive for me not knowing until I did.
Yeah, because you would have gone and spent that money.
Exactly, right? So that perspective. So how do you start in little areas, and how do you then innovate and ask people to sort of like a project-based learning approach, going to this like, I want to build this. How? I don't know, but I'm gonna do it. And here's sort of building blocks to help you, you know, continuously learn and figure that out for yourself. And that's going to allow builders to build, dreamers to dream, and people to get out.
I love that.
Sorry, say something off of that, right? A bit off topic, but now everything we've spoken about now, especially the stuff that we've learned, you know, the knowledge we've acquired, I'm sure like you didn't learn that in uni. What you're doing with your business didn't get that in uni, right? And this is just me and this is my personal take. But what are your current views on, and not so much, let me not say university, but the enforcing of you need university to do XYZ, you need university to, you know, get this job, to have a safety net, to just everything that has maybe been enforced on you, or the general message that is enforced about unless we're not.
No. Let's go.
Let's try to keep it short. My laptop's about to die, unfortunately. I know you guys are enjoying, but the laptop is about to die. Go.
You know what's the biggest flex in America? I'm a Harvard dropout.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you ask yourself why. then you begin to understand that because there's so many people who've walked that journey, that there's sort of a blueprint for that. I'll ask you the same question for South Africa. Like, you can't name a single person. So when you
I guess for me, I think it depends industry wise, no?
I'd
Like
say
musician wise, like you'll probably find more people that have dropped out of university or school are successful in that route, maybe rather than tech or rather than, I don't know, you know? But anyways, go.
yeah, I think like that. But I'm not saying I'm not discouraging going to school. I'm not discouraging going to school.
Disclaimer. Disclaimer.
Don't sort of see your parents saying, TVD was and I'm gonna say that, but it's like one of those things where I think the moment you decide to take responsibility for your own learning is when you become you question the process that other people have set. Like, I'm a big believer that not all degrees are 3-year degrees, right? And another thing is, look, I've had it in classes sometimes where you get punished for knowing, because you're in an environment, and I completely get it. Given that the 90% of the room might not know exactly what's going on and might still want to start from scratch, but I remember I once almost failed the test, right? Because I knew that what we're doing it's not the correct way, right? And I did, I went to the end of the process, right? I failed because it's like, no, that's not what I asked you to do. Only for at the end of the term for actually them to get to the point, right? So you get punished for not knowing or for taking initiative in that sense, right? But you also look at other ways you can and the consequences of that. I think the moment you are able to then say, I want to learn, I want to go beyond what is currently being taught in institutions, I want to implement, is the moment you get to that point where you start questioning, what is valuable, what isn't valuable. And from that, it opens up a whole door and a whole room where, I don't want to incite some type of action, so we just relax there. But maybe we can speak about it once we've proven, the role that, I don't want to be talking saying drop out of school. When the reality is that I can't tell you there's so many consequences to both sides. One thing I'll leave with is that our risk appetite is going to only decrease every single day. And one thing I'll say is, regardless of if you go to uni or if you don't, join startups, build a startup. I think most things that are seen, especially in our climate, is you want to go the corporate routes and climb that whole ladder. And in most cases, some people do all of it in it, but it just bothers me sometimes how much innovation has died because someone said, I want to climb to meet partner or be ahead of this, right? When they could have went to a startup, failed, but they did literally build the whole infrastructure themselves. They have knowledge, so that if they want to go back to corporate or whatever, it's no more, no, you're a junior dev. No, it's I'm a senior dev or I'm a senior dev because I have all these accolades and experience in it. So I'll just say, I think I'd like to see a culture shift in people taking risks earlier. But with regards to uni, man, you guys gotta decide for yourself, bro. I don't want to be quoted 5 years down the line. TVD is against universities.
I know it on the news, bro. Some shit. Nah, I hear you. I think I'm very much aligned with the same points, dude. If I'm being completely honest, I think we can't, look at the one side and say you can build your risk factor if you go to university. Sometimes we need people to go to university, you know what I mean? You want to be operated on by someone who did well in university and has a degree and a qualification to do so, so I'd say for me, when I think about uni, I think about the type of person that you want to be, because there's people that are built to work in the working force, which is not a bad thing, and by no means should you not want to climb up the corporate ladder, whatever. But then there's also people that are meant to build, that are meant to create the things for those people to fall into, and I agree with you still to that point, is if you're that person that wants to build and create something and create opportunities for the people who have degrees and qualifications, then you do need to start young. You do need to kind of break the barriers a little bit, whether that is going to uni, whether that's not finishing uni, whatever. Like we said, do what you feel correct. But whatever feels right to you and whatever you feel like your purpose is what you should do that. For me personally, it's necessary in some cases. I'll just put it like that. That's the safest way I can put it. It's necessary for certain things, and if you feel like you are on either side of the coin, that's what you should chase. But I align with what you're saying. So yeah, I think we can close it off there.
No,
man.
what's he saying? You
haven't answered
right?
it. Yeah.
This guy.
I think, without persuading anyone to any side, I think I just look at it as, what are you going to uni for? And let's say to learn, right? Now, what is the definition of learning? What is the metric for learning? And for me, it's, okay, this topic, can I get from point A to the end of it and understand? Is there a change in the same environment under those conditions? Is my behavior changed? Have I learned? And I think my only, not issue, I don't want to say issue. I think it's just...
No, it's an issue, yes.
I think how I look at it is the emphasis on actually learning or learning within a set time. Does it matter whether I say learn how to read my ABCs from grade 1 to grade 2, like I have to learn it in that year, or is it when I learn something, then I advance to the next stage? Is the emphasis on learning? And I think that's where my view is, but I don't want to say too much because then I'm going to start. Yeah. So again, do what works for you. Yeah, let's close it.
Understand both extremes tend towards one.
There we go.
Yeah.
I understand both extremes. Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed. This was probably one of my favorite episodes.
100%.
TBH, TBD.
No, for real, like I said, one of the smartest guys I know. For real.
Thanks for coming to my
Very
podcast.
enjoyable.
Oh yeah,
TBD show.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me close it off.
Go for it. Yeah.
way.
Close the thing.
Thanks for coming to our podcast. Hosted by yours truly, TBD. You can catch us on
YouTube,
yours,
TikTok, and
YouTube, TikTok. I thought you guys give like personal handles.
no. But you can drop yours if you want.
I don't have Instagram. Like,
this guy.
Long day. It's gone.
You can send me an email at. I'm playing.
Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks, guys.
Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks. It's been a pleasure.
Peace.
Yo.